Okay, Mikimo, take it away. Thanks.
All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Just as a quick reminder, this presentation is being recorded. My name is Kimo Nichols. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a member of the Next Steps Committee and a staff member in the Access Services Department in Hamilton Library at UH Manoa. Today, HLA Next Steps is excited to present an introduction to the Loy McCandless Marks Botanical Library at the National Tropical Botanical Garden, or NTBG in Kalaheo, Kauaʻi. We are pleased to welcome three distinguished presenters from the NTBG today, and I'll introduce them in a second. But first, I just wanted to give you a quick heads up about our upcoming series on library digitization projects. If you want to mark your calendars now, beginning next month on July 18th, we'll be presenting the first of what will be a three-part webinar series on this topic, including separate presentations on digitization ethics, copyright, and logistical concerns. An announcement and registration link for this upcoming series will be sent out soon. Now, for today's main event, we are pleased to have with us today from the National Tropical Botanical Garden, David Lawrence, Tim Kelly, and Kevin Hoke. David Lawrence is Senior Research Botanist at the NTBG. His research specialties are systematics and floristics of tropical vascular plants, including Pacific and Neotropical members of the Rubiaceae family. He also studies the Monomyceae family of the Malagasy region and tropical America, and ferns of various Pacific islands. Tim Flynn is curator of the National Tropical Botanical Garden, herbarium. He holds a BSc in horticulture from Texas Tech University. Tim came to the NTBG in 1980 as an intern in the summer internship program and has served on the staff there since 1981. His research interests include studies of the bryophytes, ferns, and flowering plants of Hawaii and other Pacific islands in Polynesia and Micronesia. Kevin Hoke is the Plant Records Manager for the NTBG, a candidate for Masters of Library and Information Science here at UH Manoa, and the Vice President of the Hawaii branch of the Association of Records Managers and Administrators. Mahalo nui to the three of you for joining us today. I will turn it over to you now, so whoever wants to rock the mic first, go for it.
Dr. Lawrence?
Well, I will start, I guess. Yeah, this is the herbarium and library of the National Tropical Botanical Garden, and we're located in the Botanical Research Center, which is headquartered here in Kalaheo. It's our newest building on campus, actually. What are we, about 15 years old now, Tim, I think? And it was like the first green building on Kauaʻi, meaning it had LEED's gold standard, I think, in the what was it?
The construction process.
Yeah, construction process. The photovoltaic cells. Anyway, we have a climate controlled environment here to house the library, which is about 24,000 books and periodicals, as well as our herbarium of close to 100,000 specimens. And that helps control, molding and any insect infestations.
Yeah, I like to think of us as all as librarians of some sort, as we all manage some kind of a collection that is a reference collection. Our herbarium, I would say, is closer to 94,000 specimens. If you don't know what a herbarium is, it's a collection of preserved plant specimens. Most commonly, they've been pressed, dried, and mounted on archival paper, and each one will have a label. It tells you plant name, where it was collected, habitat type, what it was growing with, and most importantly, a description of the plant. We now try to have the latitude, longitude, the date it was collected, and when a collector makes a collection like this, he or she will give it a unique number. And for that unique number,
Can I show them a specimen?
yeah, we'll show you a specimen. For that unique number, there may be just a single specimen collected or a number of duplicates. And we send these duplicates to other institutions around the world. There are about 3,500 herbaria around the world. We're particularly, well, I would say we're a small regional collection. We send our collections to Bishop Museum, to UC Berkeley, New York Botanical Garden, Missouri Botanical Garden, Field Museum, the Smithsonian, Royal Botanic Garden, Kew, Natural History Museum in Paris, Edinburgh, Royal Botanic Garden, Edinburgh, Berlin, anywhere that we have collaborators, people who are experts on a particular group, or places that have historically strong collections from Hawaii and the Pacific Islands where we're working. So that's what we send those out. And we'll show you the collection as we walk through.
Yeah, thanks everyone. It'll be nice to, after we kind of chat all that out for a few minutes, we'll take you around a little, give you a little tour of the facility. Yeah, I'm Kevin Houck. I'm the plant records manager for National Tropical Botanical Garden, and so we actually have 5 botanical gardens in our national system, 4 here in Hawaii. 3 of them are actually on Kauaʻi, 1 on Maui in Hana, and we also have a garden in Florida. So I manage the botanical living collections database side of our metadata for all of our living plant collections planted out in the garden. So it's things like geospatial data, collection data, where it's from, things like that. Some of the taxonomic resources that, in terms of like authors who named species and things like that, are sort of tied into a database in tandem with the entire herbarium data set. So Tim mentioned there's about 94,000 pressed herbarium specimens. And in the living collections of the botanical gardens, we have right around 100,000 plants that we are living, that we are currently tracking and monitoring, and even the dead ones. We track the dead ones. You know, when did they die? You know, where were they planted? What was the soil conditions? You know, what slope, what angle of what valley, and which ahupua'a were they collected from, and what year, by who? So there's a lot of important data that even goes along with the records for our living plants that we no longer have with us, but and that all kind of ties into our overall conservation goals.
Yeah, we try to have representatives of the living collection in our herbarium also, make a specimen at a given point in time, hopefully with flowering or fruiting. It's linked to the living collections database and becomes incorporated into the herbarium as well, to our herbarium database. So that way we can verify the identity of the plant, and also have a permanent record of it should it expire in the living collections.
Should we start walking out? Because we can.
Sure.
We're going to walk out and we're going to show you kind of our setup. We do things slightly different here than other places. We keep our library collections right next to our herbarium collections. Most institutions separate them, either different floors, different buildings even. But we felt that it was necessary and perhaps very useful for us to be able to just walk across the, walk 15 or 20 feet right to our reference that we're looking at, and take those references and look right at the specimens, whereas most places you don't have that closeness. They essentially need the same requirements as far as humidity and light and things like that. So that's what we've done here. And our original idea for that was based on what was done at the Botanical Research Institute of Texas. They built a new building and separated everything. So we're back. It seems like we're one of the few places that keep both our reference collection and our herbarium collections together. But we'll head out now and look at that. Yeah, I don't know if you can see that on our, we've got our, over here somewhere, yeah, all of our stacks, like Dave said, about 24,000 volumes, botanical and horticultural works from around the world. We really try to focus on taxonomy a lot here. We are constantly adding to the collection, maybe not as much with our journals as we would like, but we're constantly adding new books to the collection. I will say our library is open to the public, although we're not a lending library. We probably don't get as much use as we would like, but it is a great resource. Over here in the compactor is our herbarium collection. Typical compactor system. We separate all our specimens into groups, lycophytes, which are primitive ferns, gymnosperms, monocots, and dicots. Within each group, they're separated geographically by family, within each family geographically by genus. And once we get to the level of genus, I'll open this up. Kevin can show you. We separate things geographically. So anything in a particular genus is all stored together. They're color-coded folders. Specimens like we had maybe seen earlier, they're all pressed flat and mounted. This is one from Vanuatu, a particular fern. This fern is also found here in Hawaii, the Kauaʻi fern. But we'll have specimens from many different of a particular species. We will have multiple specimens because we say the plants are like people. For any one particular species, there's a lot of variation, and we try and capture that. And sunshade, wet, dry, from one end of the island chain to the other, or from one island group to another island group. So we try and capture that here. We're in the process of digitizing all of our collection. You had mentioned digitizing the library. We're in the process of digitizing our herbarium collection. We're about 80% done right now. Those specimens are available on our website. We're also digitizing our, and that's the vascular plants I'm talking about. We're also in the process of digitizing all of our bryophytes and lichens. And those again are on our website, but also on a number of portals for ferns, for bryophytes, and for lichens. So you can find those online. We're trying to get that information out. Dave, I'm just rattling on. I don't know what I'm saying.
No, you're covering it very well. I guess a couple of the families that I work on have kind of strange sounding scientific names, the Rubiaceae and the Monimiaceae, but the Rubiaceae is actually the coffee family, coffee and its relatives, including gardenias and quinine, which is a very important in our medicinal cornucopia, because quinine is found to control malaria, and so it's been the source of many anti-malarials. Anyway, it's a big family. It's something like the fourth largest flowering plant family. And I can just show you a couple of specimens here. Most of our collections, say the majority, are from the Hawaiian area, right, Tim?
Yeah.
The Hawaiian Islands in these manila folders, and then others are from other areas in Polynesia, including the Marquesas Islands, which we've worked on. Here's a Kopiko or Psychotria from the Hawaiian Islands. This is from Kauaʻi, and you can see on here, each of our collections is barcoded, and then when it's been digitized, that's checked off, whether it's a photo or a scan.
And this one will also tell us that we've sent duplicates of this to
Oh, yeah.
Bishop Museum, the Cal Academy, New York Botanical Garden, UC Berkeley, and the Smithsonian. So we do try and get this information out, share it, not keep all our eggs in one basket. Gosh, I don't know. Does anybody have any questions? That might be the easiest thing, because I can rattle on and not, people are just like bored to tears. So
Yeah, what are all these bundles here? That's my question.
yeah. Yeah, so not only do we send stuff out, we get things in. So here are specimens from let's see, this week we got in things from Geneva, from Hiroshima University, from the Smithsonian, from Bishop Museum, and from Miami University. All specimens somehow related to Hawaii or the Pacific. The ones from Miami were collections from Vanuatu and New Caledonia, and we do have pretty strong collections from those areas as well. So yeah, we constantly get specimens in as well as sending things out.
Some of them are just on exchange with other institutions like Bishop Museum will send us an approximately equal amount of specimens that we send them every year. Others are come in as gifts for identification. Like for example, the family I work on, the coffee and its relatives, often sent dupes that are, it could be from tropical America because I worked on the flora of Mesoamericana for some years. So in return for the specimen, I try to identify it correctly and they get it identification for their herbarium as well, sending duplicates. And same with the Monimiaceae, which is a weird family, which I worked on when I worked in the Malagasy area in the Southwest Indian Ocean for my dissertation. Many years ago, but there aren't many people who work on it, so I'm still.
He's still in demand.
Still in demand, yes, I guess you could say.
Gentlemen, we have a question of what is involved with digitizing an herbarium specimen. Does it involve a high definition scan image?
So we only scan our type specimens. Years ago, we were part of a grant that was meant to digitize type specimens, and we got a big scanner that had been inverted so that we would raise the specimen up to the scanner so we're not flipping it over. Now we usually just take high definition photographs. That very simple process. We basically come in the way it's been set up. We photograph is taken. It has a color bar. It has a scale bar on it. It's a very simple process. So it's just a single photograph. When we take things like take specimens of or take photographs of our bryophytes and lichens, we use a stacking feature that, depending on how thick or how high the specimen is, it'll take maybe as many as 10 photographs, compresses it all together so we get a nice image that is very clear all from from the. I'm such an idiot.
Yeah, a lot of depth of field.
There's a lot of depth of field. Thank you. And it's hard for me to talk when I'm not interacting with people. I can't see you rolling your eyes or anything like that.
Actually, the imaging station is right through the.
Yeah, it's a pretty simple.
Take a quick look.
Some places like if you went to the Natural History Museum in Paris, they have a big conveyor belt system that runs like 24 hours, and they just take photograph after photograph after photograph. But then they have something like 11 million specimens. We have 94,000. So yeah, right now we rely on volunteers to do all of our imaging for us.
Yeah, let's have a look at it.
Pretty simple setup. I won't begin to try and explain to you how it works because I have no idea. We have
Turn on the lights and
we have a volunteer who set it all up for us, who developed a protocol that requires the least amount of effort by the person actually taking the photograph. But if you want, we can head down and go look at the rare book room. That's probably the most interesting thing. And when you've talked about scanning books, it is something that we've had a lot of interest in from our trustees who want us to consider scanning our collection. I don't know how much of it is unique. My impression is that maybe not a lot of it is, but it's something we could certainly look into if we knew what we were doing.
yeah, well, some of these are available on the Biodiversity Heritage Library. I think the scans of some of the literature, other rare books have not been digitized yet or not, available perhaps. And our own regular library system is based on what the Library of Congress, Kevin?
Yeah, we
Periodical.
yeah, we typically catalog. We use we'll talk a little bit maybe more about the databasing
Okay.
a little later, but we actually use the Library World, which is a pretty affordable piece of software, but it doesn't unfortunately have a back end that we can interface with our database. But yeah, maybe we can save a little bit of that for for the end here, but here's our rare book room.
This was designed, the building was designed by a man named Dean Sakamoto, who's from Honolulu, but was teaching at Yale at the time. So this glass encased rare book room is based on the design that they use at Yale. This houses the Loy McCandless Mark Rare Book Library. This has about 1,200 volumes of horticultural and botanical books. It's particularly strong in floras, which are books about plants of a particular area that might have descriptions of the plants, illustrations, maps, keys for the various families. The new ones, Florilegia, which are, and you may know this already, and I apologize, but basically books of illustrations of plants of a particular area or a particular plant group. It's strong in accounts of the early exploring expeditions. It has a set of the Banks Florilegium, which I think UH has, as well as Bishop Museum. People get excited about first edition of The Origin of Species. It has almost a complete set of I can't remember. Sorry. Let's go in there.
Yeah, so Mrs. Mark, she was one of the founding trustees of the garden, I think. And she accumulated a nice collection of botanical and horticultural books with the help of Joseph Rock and Horace Clay, actually. Yeah, Horace Clay.
Yeah, she apparently was interested in horticulture, botanical books, and art and architecture, as well as what I call bodice rippers. When she passed away, she wanted her collection of at least the horticulture, botanical things to go to some institution that would keep it all together, and not if it had duplicates, to sell the duplicates. She was looking at Bishop Museum here in Cornell, and she chose us for some reason. We said we would house the collection appropriately. And for years, it was still in Honolulu in an old bowling alley where they were at climate control bowling alley.
Yeah.
We eventually brought them over here and had them in 40-foot containers that had been retrofitted. The climate control was really great, but we really wanted to house them appropriately, and so that was the reason the building this particular structure.
Yeah, it's very cool.
We don't really seem to add a lot of new works to the collection other than original botanical art through our Florilegium Society. And we add maybe 15 to 20 original botanical works every year. We do have one of the I guess the one book we've gotten in the last couple of years is kind of interesting is the first Florilegium of the Hawaiian Islands. Now, we've had a number of copies of this. This one was interesting because it was given to King Kalakaua by the Miss Frances Sinclair, who did the artwork in this Florilegium. That is one of the newer things that we've added. Maybe we can just set this down, and if you guys have questions, or we can just talk to you guys directly, so I'm not babbling. Any questions, guys?
Like,
How are you, Dave?
oh, they're kind of
Yeah, I
asking about volunteers, looks like.
Oh, volunteers.
Maybe a question about volunteers.
Yeah, sorry, you guys answered that. I was just wondering about the digitization project, but it was right. You answered me right after that. I was just kind of wondering about acquisitions. How do you acquire all this? How do you acquire all the rare books? They're donated, or you have somebody on staff who works with the collection?
The bulk of this collection was all from Loy McCandless Marks, and her family owned McCandless Ranch on the Big Island, and she had gathered this, like Dave was saying, with the help of
Yeah, Joseph Rock and
Horace
Horace.
Clay, they were both horticulturists and scientists in Hawaii. Other than that, we get occasional donations from trustees or something like that. We're not actively acquiring new books, although we did have in the past year gotten a significant
collection of books on pteridophytes, ferns from a retired medical doctor in Honolulu, Dan Palmer, who wrote the fern flora of the Hawaiian Islands. And he has decided to gift us with his fern library. So that, I would say it's more happenstance.
Yeah,
we get
sometimes botanists who retire and are familiar with us, will offer their collection to us if we wanted to accept it. So we've gotten some from, other botanists as well, kind of complement the collections. And
We've been really lucky getting new botanical works from Dave has an acquaintance who I believe worked at Missouri Botanical Garden, who has gone
Oh,
up
right,
his
that's
way
right.
to make sure that we get duplicates. So we got an entire flora of China, as well as basically anything that Missouri Botanical Garden publishes, we've gotten. So we've just been really lucky. We don't have a huge budget for acquisition, so we rely on a lot of help and generosity from other people. Is
Yeah,
Kevin
hopefully-
using his phone?
Hopefully I didn't make everyone seasick on the tour.
It is Kevin's using his laptop. It is a beautiful building. Who started the library? Huh. The library was started when the garden was started back in 1970 or so, when we first opened. We were chartered by Congress in 1964 to create a tropical garden for the for the United States. Senator Inouye was involved in that. I think we purchased the land here in 1968, 185 acres from land from the Allerton family. I think we probably really opened in about 1970. And as soon as the garden opened, they began to acquire works for the library.
yeah, wasn't the first director, William Stewart, and
Yeah.
he just got a small library.
Had a small library. When I got here in 1980, the library was in a converted garage. But we've slowly grown, and like I say, we depend on a lot of gifts from other people.
Yeah. We are a nonprofit, even though we have a congressional charter, and we don't have any direct funding from the US government or state of Hawaii. We kind of rely on grants and then donations and from our trustees and things like that. We do have some
Question.
endowment.
We have a question about our biggest conservation issues, preservation issues. I would say it's humidity. We hate, because electricity is so expensive. When we first built this building, we were running when we first opened it, we were spending about $16,000 a month on electricity. The garden, when it was built, it had photovoltaic embedded in the roofing membrane. And when that worked, it produced about 30% of our electricity. But as the photovoltaic cells broke down, we realized we're going to have to tear up the roofing membrane to replace them. So we don't use that at all anymore. So it's very expensive for us to try and keep the environment as dry as we would like. Our biggest problem seems to be mold and then book lice. So we think we're about to get some money from Senator Schatz to work on perhaps our working on the environment to try and maybe make sure the building is completely sealed, to do a little work on the air handling system and things like that.
Yeah, the book lice are actually more of a problem in the herbarium than they are in the books. We don't really, they don't seem to really affect the books, but they do eat mildew, don't they? I believe, and mold that might grow on the books. But then they can eat parts of the plant as well, the petals and flowers.
So do we have a rare book librarian or curator? You're looking at Dr. Lawrence now. Our librarian was Richard Hanna, who used to work at the Hamilton Library. He passed away about 11 years ago, so we don't really have a librarian. Access to the rare book room is people who have an interest. I would say the people who get the most use out of it are tattoo artists. they come in here and will spend hours going through the Florilegia, taking photographs, looking for new design ideas and things like that. But yeah, we currently don't have a librarian. We rely on a volunteer who not only helps us with digitizing our vascular plant specimens, but she was also a librarian at Rutgers. So she does a lot of the cataloging, and Kevin has done things for us as well,
Oh, yeah.
part of his master's program.
Yeah, yeah. For about 9 months, I was in the library for 5 hours a week through part of the LAS curriculum, and it was awesome. But it's really just a drop in the bucket, though, like 5 hours a week for 9 months. I mean, it's a small library, right? 24,000 volumes, but there's so much to be done, checking bug traps, and catalog, and then processing all the new incoming donations, cataloging, collection management, and offloading old duplicates, things like this, giving tours of the rare book room and fielding requests, things like that. So Dr. Lawrence is the official curator of the library, but he also, as he mentioned, he's one of the world experts in taxonomy and floristics for various plant groups. So it's without a full-time dedicated librarian, which said it's been about 11 years, it's sort of everyone kind of gets pulled in to help out in various ways.
Right. I don't have any background really in library science, but I've been learning from Kevin and others as part of his program as well. And
one of the questions was about our readership. And I would say that, like I said earlier, we're a very underutilized collection. We occasionally will get, I almost hate to say it, but sometimes our usership goes up as the weather gets hotter and more humid. We'll have people come in here and sit in the library. Yeah, we don't get a lot of use. I would say over, at least for the rare book collection, over the time that we've had it, there have been maybe 3 or 4 instances of people with a botanical interest using the collection. Kevin did have a request from France. Apparently we have a unicate of a French publication that they found by looking at our online catalog, and so that they were able to at least Xerox some of the frontispiece and pages like that to send to them. How do people find out about the collection, the facility? Through our social media, things like that. I would say we've never really advertised the library aspect of it. We do advertise and promote the Florilegium aspect, which is the botanical art that is created by this group of professional artists who comes out here every year in March and April. I would say that gets more promotion than anything else. We try to have an art show every year that's open to the public to showcase that work, and we just published a Florilegium of their work for the past however many years it's been, 10 years perhaps.
Yeah, 10 or 12, something like that. Yeah, we put the artwork on display in the vestibule upstairs, not the vestibule, but in the main area upstairs, and that brings in quite a few people, and some of them are interested in the library. They'll ask. You can access our library database through our website, actually, Library World, if you go down to the bottom, and our herbarium database as well. So
one of the questions was, have we ever interacted with the Eden Project? And in Cornwall, not directly. One of their early trustees, Ian Prance, is also a science trustee here at the garden. So there is that kind of connection. It's a kind of a tenuous connection, I would say.
Yeah.
Most of our interactions, at least with other institutions, is not necessarily through the library, but through the herbarium and the exchange of specimens and loans.
Yeah, back to the Florilegium, it's definitely like our one major programming event of the year. But it's kind of neat because we'll have like the main reception with folks can come, and we introduce all the artists and all of their work each year. But then we'll have follow-up, like kind of open houses every
Right.
week. And so we get quite a few people coming in for those events, but without like a dedicated full-time librarian, it's hard to host more programming events. Like, for example, like, we've talked about like, oh, we should do a book sale, because we do have triplicates of certain works that would be really popular, but it's just a matter of finding we're nonprofit, right? So finding the staff and the resources to make it happen, and we will one of these days, but
Hopefully we will.
yeah.
I have a question for you guys. I've always wondered, and I'm not sure we know exactly what the best way is to catalog the botanical art, and how do we include that into our library catalog? Everything has been scanned, so we have images, but how any ideas or suggestions on how we might catalog that and add that to our collection? If anybody knows, it'd be that, I think we would appreciate help with something like that. And this is more of a preservation question. We have we have barcodes that we put on our books, things like that. Is that something that we could put on the back of the paper of the artworks, or how would we attach that if it's not physically attached to the paper? How would we keep those together?
Yeah, it's a good, maybe this is a good time to go into databasing. We feel free to keep firing off questions and answers to Tim and Dave, but yeah, we have a homegrown database system that we use for our herbarium and our living collections that we built basically from the ground up since 1999. And like a pet project of mine, but also like of the whole organization, has been to incorporate the library metadata and the library collections into our homegrown database. It's kind of tricky though. So these guys mentioned that we use Library World, and actually we'll provide that link in the chat before we sign off, if you all want to browse our collections. But our programmer, Matt Goodale, and I have kind of been looking at different ways to incorporate an open source system into housing our library metadata for all of our library collections. But it has to be one that interfaces with our system. We use what's called a WAMP stack. If you're into tech stuff, it's kind of a simple setup for databasing. And so, but finding an open source system that is used for bibliographic data has been a little tricky to find one that incorporates with that's free. So without paying for, a commercial solution, we're kind of looking into those, but we found one that we're sort of taking for a test run. Hopefully next month we'll start with it, but it's what's nice about it is it provides a backend where our homegrown database for our living collections and our herbarium can actually talk to the library bibliographic database and extract information from it and do things like add records, edit records, query records, filter, sort, and delete records. So it's a bit of a project, but with that, things that you can't do like interlibrary loan. We're a small library, it might not necessarily be.
Don't get many requests for that, but.
Yeah, so it's there's some downsides to not being able to just throw a bunch of money at, plus with subscriptions, subscriptions to external journals and things like that. We don't really have anything like that, so it'll take a little bit more research and money to make all that happen. But yeah, stay tuned. We'll keep you all posted. That's kind of part of my thesis work. I'm looking into sort of incorporating some of that. So and hopefully that will include the botanical collections too.
There was a question a while back from Tori asking, can you talk about the older library in the cottage?
So there was I'm not sure so there was a library that the Allertons had in their cottage that went through a couple of hurricanes. And I know I was involved in 1982. And it's a very sad story on many levels, because it was left to me to go through to salvage books that had had gotten wet, that I was finding things outside buried in sand. I was able to bring them up, dust off the sand, try and dry them out. Unfortunately, Mr. Allerton wanted things to go back to normal. And that meant he wanted the books placed back in the shelves. They were not treated for mold or mildew or things like that.
Was that saltwater damage, Tim, or?
Saltwater damage, sand and things like that. I found one of Cook's voyages, the accounts of his first voyage, buried in a foot of sand underneath a Kauaʻi tree. You know, the binding was all gone, but the paper was, you know, was high quality paper, rag paper. And I brushed that off. For a lot of the really rare things, we wrapped up in paper, and the local jelly factory allowed us to store things wrapped in butcher paper in their freezer. We sent a lot of things to a book restorer in San Francisco, and they never came back. And yeah, we lost that. After the second hurricane in 1992.
Nozaniki, right?
Yeah, I don't know that there was much left of that library that was in the Allertons. Luckily, our library up here and the library that we had the old converted garage and things, those had all been moved to this site, and those survived relatively well. I don't think there was any damage to that end of the building, to be honest. And I'm not sure if that answers your question, but the old library collection that was in the Allerton house is essentially does not exist anymore.
Yeah, I think Vera replied, gave a response to your question about handling the works on paper. And if I'm not mistaken, Vera, do you work at the Honolulu Museum of Art? She would probably be a good person to connect with.
Yeah, I'm here with my intern as well, who has worked with Rare Books. But yeah, I was going to say it's a bit of a unicorn trying to find an image like database or cataloging database and an ILS database that communicate with each other. And like we definitely maintain 2 different databases at the museum, like one for our library books and then another for art objects. So I have never heard of anything that like 2 systems that can communicate with each other. But anyway, to the question of I think so my intern who I have here this summer, who is also named Vera, she had the idea that maybe you could treat the botanical art as works of art or works on paper. And
yeah,
go ahead, Vera.
So I've seen at libraries that are in other art museums have flat files with map boarding and then interleaved like paper to protect the top of the artwork. And then you can pencil on the back of the mat board, because it's not attached to the artwork, the catalog number. And the system that you might want to use for that could be within your library system and to treat the one collection as an independent collection, or you could figure out a museum system for it. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, but nothing that we know of open source. Yeah. You'd have to subscribe to so we use TMS, and then in our library, we use an Ex Libris, the Elmo's the back end, and then Discovery Primo is the front end. So yeah, I don't know what your budget is, but anyway, yeah, there we go. Thank you.
Not as much as we would like it to be, though.
Yeah.
It never is. Yeah, so.
Yeah, we have a number of line drawings too of new species or formerly new
nice.
species, just in our flat files as well, and it'd be nice to catalog those. And
yeah, some
pen
of
and
the
ink drawings.
some of the earlier works that we had done, and I don't know if it was the board that they were painted on or what, they were done by some English artists in the in the 80s, and they really suffered from foxing. So
Yeah.
Yeah, this is an example. Actually, it was done by that English artist and Farrar, yes. But it was, recently published as a new species from the Hawaiian Islands, from Kauaʻi. It's an endemic flowering plant.
It's
Yeah,
totally
some of it has
Mhm.
quite a bit of foxing and.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
also.
they could place that into a map board.
Yeah, I think
And
that's a
then-
really good
And
suggestion.
then there's like a view,
Yeah.
there's ones that have like frame where you can see through the board.
We actually have a large collection of
Mountain.
botanical prints as well.
Oh my God.
You want to talk about the Flora Legion at all?
I was just mentioning the Flora Legion earlier. It's like I say, it's a group of botanical artists that have been coming out here for 10 or 12 years now. This is actually that's yes. Thanks to the Legion. This is an example of one of the artworks was done. This is a native hibiscus. I believe this might be one from Molokai. This is hibiscus and Arnadianus subspecies immaculatus. Yeah. So this was done by one of our artists. I believe this particular lady is from Cleveland, perhaps.
Oh, that's from
No,
Maryland?
Minnesota.
Minnesota. right.
Minnesota, yeah. So our artists come from, we have 2 artists from Japan, we have 4 artists from Australia, 1 from Chile, and the rest are American, both living here in Hawaii as well as on the mainland. And we get about 15 new artworks every year. They come out, they pay their own way, they buy their own food, and for us giving them all that, they give us a one large artwork like this plus a smaller work that we can use to make G-clays and sell and help support the garden.
Yeah, they're usually based on plants living in our living collections, that we bring up and as needed, and we'll illustrate them.
Everything is based on
days.
something growing in the garden, whether it's native species that grow wild in Limahuli on our North Shore or plants that we have in our living collections. Any other questions? Very nice. I'm dying here. Do they get to choose which plant they illustrate? Yes, they do. We often make suggestions, but it also depends on, they all come at the same time of year. And so it kind of, in some ways, limits their choices, but they all choose what they want to work on. One of the artists from Japan always seems to choose the most difficult thing she could find. She did breadfruit one year that she literally counted every single flower, and it's just amazing. This year she's doing banana, a huge banana inflorescence, the male and female flowers. Yeah, I don't. If you ever want to look it up, if you're on Instagram, she is green as all lowercase, GREENASAS. Her name's Asuka Hishiki, and she's amazing. Just, check her out. She's a wonderful artist, and we're very lucky to have her. Her work she did last year was one of the corpse flowers. Really unbelievable, amazing artists. We're very lucky that they come out here and choose to spend time with us.
Yeah, they usually come out in the early spring around March. So as Tim said, it's kind of limits what's in flower at that time of year, but we often take walks through the garden, and then they'll look at certain plants that they might want to illustrate or that they're interested in, and we can bring up material for them to work on.
And then we often make specimens of that material so that we have it in the herbarium. So have book illustrators asked to copy these images? Ooh,
book illustrators?
No. We have, well, I think people have asked, but we didn't have images. Somebody had asked for images of seaweed, and we did not have those images here. So generally, like I say, we're very underutilized. Probably we're just, we're on a small island in the middle of a big ocean, and even just the difference between here and where you are in Honolulu, I think it has a huge impact on our audience and the number of people we don't reach.
Yeah, it was interesting during my internship in the library over 9 months, hardly any reference to requests. There's just not a lot of traffic that comes through here. And most of the ones that we did get were either for rare books or during the Florilegium programming events. We do have a lot of students that come through the garden, interns and folks doing different botanical projects at primarily at UH Manoa, but also from all over the world that'll come through the garden, and occasionally they'll use some of the library resources, but predominantly they're looking to use the herbarium and living collections for their research. So
yeah, I think Wikipedia and Instagram have been the death of libraries based on my own children, which is really sad. I'd be surprised if my youngest daughter, who's old enough to know what a library is, I don't know that she ever even goes near one. So if it's not on Instagram, she probably won't read it.
well, we might have to go to that digitization seminar that they're hosting next month.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be really nice to get a lot of these works digitized, but I mean, gosh, yeah, it's as these gentlemen mentioned, a lot of the collections that we do have in our physical resources are digitized somewhere by some various libraries, or some of them you can actually find on openlibrary.org, but a lot of the rare ones are not. So when we get these rare requests, we're kind of thumbing through, throwing on the gloves and snapping photos, and yeah, so
we probably have, I would say, fewer than 10 unique items in here that aren't found other places. It would be nice to somehow digitize those, but the books are also very fragile and
Can Nalea come in?
we're in the middle of a presentation.
We're in a webinar.
Oh, sorry.
So it's
patrons.
yeah, darn. Yeah, we have somebody who wants to use it. Yeah, sorry.
One of our own staff members,
Yeah.
actually.
So yeah, I completely don't even know what I was saying.
Yeah, well, places like Missouri Botanical Garden Library, for example, they have digitized many of their rare books, or New York Botanical Garden. So as Tim said, only a few things that are unique here that are not in the larger botanical collections.
Anything else, guys? I think we're kind of running into a brick wall.
Well, we're coming up on the 1 o'clock hour. So does anybody have any other questions?
Well, great to digitize those books.
Yeah. And did we even give you what you wanted? I mean,
You most certainly did. Yeah, I believe so. Thank you. Thanks so much, you guys, for your time.
Yes, thank you very much. It was very educational, and we really appreciated seeing your facility and hearing about its history and what your challenges are and so forth. So thank you so much, and let us know if we can help you.
I would say that any of you who are ever on the island, if you would contact us, we'd be happy to show you not only the library and the herbarium, but the grounds as well. It's
Yeah, absolutely.
we get lonely over here on this small island.
Look this up. Yeah, please do.
Yeah, thank you
Well,
so much.
You've got a librarian in training standing between you, so
Yeah.
get ready.
Whatever we can do to support anyone that's watching or will watch the recording, or any of your colleagues, anyone in your networks, whatever we can do to help support your research, that's why we're here. So please don't be strangers.
Yeah.
All right, thanks so much, you guys. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, sure, Kimo.
Bye.
All right. See you guys. Just also a reminder before anybody else leaves, starting next month on July 18th, is the first part in our digitization series. So we'll send an email out about that soon. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, you guys.
Yeah.
Aloha.
Bye.